Let's get started. Number 10, emotional invalidation. Every time you cried as a kid and heard "stop crying" or "I'll give you something to cry about," your brain was learning a dangerous lesson. Your feelings are problems, not experiences to understand. Researchers at Duke University studied 127 adults and found that childhood emotional invalidation directly predicted chronic emotional inhibition in adulthood, which then predicted depression and anxiety symptoms. The kids who learned to shut down their emotions didn't just get over it. They carried that shutdown into every relationship they'd ever have. Here's what invalidation sounds like. You're overreacting. It's not that big of a deal. Other kids have it worse. You're being too sensitive. Every time a parent said these things, they were essentially telling their child that their internal experience was wrong. And when a kid hears that enough times, they stop trusting themselves entirely. A 2022 study found that perceived emotional invalidation was linked to borderline personality disorder, depression, and major difficulties forming intimate relationships. These adults struggle to identify their own emotions because they spent their entire childhood being told those emotions didn't count. Now they gaslight themselves before anyone else gets the chance. Number 9, conditional love. You got a gold star. Here's some affection. You failed that test. Suddenly your parent is cold and distant. This is conditional parental regard, and a 2023 German study of 587 adolescents found something disturbing. 38% of kids had what researchers called low insecure self-esteem, and it was incredibly stable. 98% of those kids stayed stuck in that pattern. The damage mechanism is simple. When love depends on performance, children internalize that their worth depends on achievement. They become adults who can't separate who they are from what they accomplish. Columbia University researchers Melissa Kamins and Carol Dweck found that children who believed their self-worth depended on performance became highly self-critical, showed strong negative emotions, judged their performances severely, and demonstrated less persistence after setbacks. If shaving really made hair grow thicker, every balding guy would shave daily. If conditional love really motivated kids, every driven adult would be emotionally healthy. But Jeff Bezos is still bald, and most overachievers are secretly terrified that one failure will reveal they were never worthy of love in the first place. Number 8, parentification. Some kids didn't get to be kids. They were too busy being their parents' therapist, mediator, or emotional support animal. This is called parentification, and it's when children are forced to assume developmentally inappropriate adult roles. A systematic review of 95 studies across 19 countries found that parentified children experience higher rates of depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and personality disorders. The phrase "wise beyond their years" sounds like a compliment. It's actually a trauma response. When a parent dumps their adult problems on a child, when they make their kid the mediator in their marriage, when they need their child to comfort them instead of the other way around, that child learns something devastating. My needs don't matter. My job is to fix everyone else. These kids grow up into adults who feel guilty for having needs at all. They attract partners who take and take because that's the only dynamic that feels familiar. Number 7, the comparison game. Why can't you be more like your sibling? Those 7 words have destroyed more self-esteem than any playground bully ever could. A 2021 study found that young adults who experienced high levels of sibling rivalry as children had lower self-esteem, lower life satisfaction, and tended to internalize their problems. Research shows that 65% of people report that favoritism existed in their families growing up, and the disfavored children reported more intense fear and more frequent shame than their siblings. When parents compare children, they're teaching them that love is a competition with a limited supply. The less favored child spends their whole life trying to prove they're worthy of the same attention. The favored child lives in constant fear of losing their position. Nobody wins. Both siblings just learn that relationships are transactional and affection must be earned through comparison. Number 6, emotional unavailability. Some parents provided food and shelter, but nothing else. The lights were on. Nobody was home. These kids had their physical needs met while they starved emotionally. Children instinctively seek connection and emotional nourishment from their parents. When that's absent, they develop what attachment researchers call insecure attachment patterns, And those patterns don't stay in childhood. They follow people into every relationship they attempt as adults. Research shows that emotionally unavailable parenting creates adults who either become desperately clingy, constantly seeking the validation they never got, or they become avoidant, shutting down emotionally because they learned early that reaching out for connection only leads to disappointment. Either way, intimacy becomes terrifying. Number 5, inconsistent parenting. Monday, this behavior is fine. Tuesday, the same behavior triggers an explosion. When the rules change daily based on a parent's mood, children become hypervigilant. They develop an internal radar that's constantly scanning for danger. Kids need predictability. When they can't predict how their parent will react, they spend all their energy trying to read the room instead of actually developing. These children grow up into adults who can't relax. They're always waiting for the other shoe to drop because in their childhood, it always did. The anxiety this creates isn't the normal kind that responds to logic. It's wired into the nervous system. Even in safe situations, these adults feel unsafe because their childhood taught them that safety was always temporary. Number 4, dismissing your reality. That never happened. You're remembering it wrong. This is childhood gaslighting, and it creates adults who can't trust their own perceptions. When parents consistently deny a child's lived experience, that child learns to doubt themselves. Did that really happen? Am I making this up? Maybe I am too sensitive. This self-doubt becomes so ingrained that these adults need external validation for basic reality checks. Research on gaslighting shows that victims often develop anxiety, depression, and a fractured sense of identity. They become easy targets for manipulative partners because they've been trained since childhood to believe their own perceptions are unreliable. The parent who said you're remembering it wrong created an adult who says, maybe they're right about me being wrong about everything. Number 3, weaponizing silence. The silent treatment might seem less harmful than yelling. It's not. Psychologists call it stonewalling or emotional withdrawal. And neurological research shows that being deliberately ignored activates the same brain regions as physical pain. Adolescent psychologist Barbara Greenberg calls the silent treatment one of the worst types of punishment because it tells your kid, I'm totally dismissing you. You're not even worth talking to or looking at. It induces massive shame. When parents use silence as punishment, children learn that love can be withdrawn at any moment and that abandonment is always one wrong move away. These kids become adults who are terrified of conflict. They'll do anything to keep the peace because in their childhood, conflict meant total emotional abandonment. The silent treatment also teaches children that this is how you handle disagreement. They either become adults who shut down during conflict, repeating the pattern, or they become people pleasers so desperate to avoid that silence that they lose themselves entirely. Number 2, using you as a therapist. When parents confide adult problems in their children, they're not building closeness. They're building an unfair burden. Children who serve as their parents' confidant learn that their job is to manage adult emotions before they can even understand their own. A review found that these children have an attribution bias toward danger and threat. They grow up hypervigilant, always scanning for problems to solve. This creates adults who feel selfish for having needs. They attract relationships where they give everything and receive nothing because that's the only role that feels natural. Their entire identity becomes wrapped up in fixing other people because that's what their parents trained them to do. Number 1, never apologizing. Some parents could never admit they were wrong. Mistakes were acknowledged by everyone except the person who made them. When a child never sees their parent apologize, they learn that mistakes are unforgivable. They either become adults who can't apologize for anything because vulnerability feels dangerous, or they become adults who apologize for everything because they learn that someone has to take the blame, and it might as well be them. Parents who never apologized taught their children that authority means never being accountable. These kids grow up either unable to accept responsibility or crushed under the weight of responsibility for things that were never their fault. Here's the uncomfortable truth about all of this. Most parents who did these things weren't evil. They were repeating what was done to them. They were overwhelmed, under-resourced, or simply didn't know better. Understanding this doesn't erase the damage, but it does explain the pattern. The good news is that these patterns can be changed. Psychologists call it earning secure attachment. It takes work, often with a therapist. But the childhood you had doesn't have to determine the adult you become. That's all for today. If you want more videos that make you feel uncomfortably seen, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.